The film begins in France with a girl named Rosalie, packing her bags to move to her husband's house. Rosalie lives with her father in a house alone, but she always feels lonely and wishes someone would love her like any other girl. Despite her beauty, no one wants to marry her, which made her father bring a groom named Abel and gave him a lot of money to agree to marry her. Rosalie moves with her father to Abel's house, preparing for the wedding, which will be in a few days. At the same time, we see a man named Ruby hunting with his friends, and they have many dogs that they feed the animals they hunt. One animal escapes from Ruby and crosses the river, reaching Abel's house. When Abel sees it, he takes his gun and kills it while it's sleeping on the ground. We discover Abel lived his life alone and felt lonely too, wishing to love and be loved, but no girl agrees to marry him because he's poor. We also know Abel has a back problem from an old accident, making him always depressed and hopeless. Plus, he's failing in his work to the point his only customers are his friends. When Rosalie arrives, she sees Abel killing the animal, so she gets scared of him, thinking he's nervous and might hurt her, but he reassures her, telling her the animal was suffering from dog bites and he killed it to relieve its pain. Abel is amazed by Rosalie's beauty and doesn't understand why no one wanted to marry her. Abel asks Rosalie to enter the house to prepare for the wedding and notices her expensive dress, although she's marrying a poor man. We discover Abel has a small cafe rented from Ruby, but he fails to pay the rent on time, so he agreed to marry Rosalie for the money her father offered. Abel also suffers from back injury, using a leather belt wrapped around his back for protection. Plus, a cream Ruby makes himself to treat him, which was unusual at that time. At night, Rosalie prays Abel would accept her as a wife and not reject her like others, and sleeps afraid the marriage won't happen. The next day, she talks to Abel about wanting many children in the future, which is too early. So Abel replies coldly. After a few days, the wedding happens and Rosalie is happy she finally got married. While returning home, Ruby appears watching them, giving Rosalie a strange look. When she arrives home, she discovers her father will leave to return to his house, so she tries to stop him, asking him to stay with her a few days until she gets used to Abel, fearing he might abandon her or discover her truth and kick her out. But her father reassures her, saying she must stay with her husband now. At the end of the day, Abel sits with his wife Rosalie in the room, and there he discovers the truth that makes everyone refuse to marry her, as her body is covered with thick hair like men, making her look strange. Even Abel himself describes her as half monster when he sees her real appearance. It turns out Rosalie was born with this condition, and her father tried to hide it her whole life but failed, as she grew up wanting to marry like any girl. Because of her appearance, Rosalie suffered bullying and humiliation, even attempting suicide several times and trying to have relationships. But everyone who discovered her truth ran away. To hide her features, Rosalie uses heavy makeup to cover her facial hair and shaves her beard like men, so no one notices her hair. Plus, she spends most time locked at home, fearing facing people and being mocked. The next day, Abel goes to Ruby's factory to pay him what he owes, but Ruby tells him the amount isn't enough and he won't tolerate more, but will overlook it this time as he's newly married. However, he warns him the next payment must be bigger. Rosalie's life with her husband turns into heavy silence as Abel refuses to even talk to her, accusing her of lying to him, as they should have discussed it before marriage. Meanwhile, Abel gets visited by two friends whom Rosalie welcomes, kindly offering them coffee, then they leave. The next day, Rosalie leaves the house and goes to an abandoned place where she stays for several days because she feels rejected. After 2 days, Abel discovers her location and brings her back home, telling her he doesn't hate her, but is afraid for her from bullies, and asks if there's a solution for her condition, but of course there's no solution, because medicine in that era in Europe was very backward. The following day, Rosalie is seen collecting apples from the house garden when she overhears her husband talking with Ruby and discovers he owes him a large sum of money. So she decides to help pay the debts by working with Ruby at his place and offers customers to see her beard. Although this is illogical since she's a woman and no one knows about her condition, they make a bet to return after a month, and if she wins, each would pay 40 francs. Abel hears about this and argues with Rosalie, trying to stop her because she's sick and shouldn't exploit her condition for money, but she doesn't listen to him and remains locked in her room the whole month, refusing to see or speak with him so he won't hate her when seeing her real appearance. The news spreads quickly through the city and neighboring towns until all of France awaits the day to see Rosalie's beard. As it's considered an exceptional event, one day Abel goes to Ruby's house and makes him a statue from an animal Ruby previously hunted, telling him he's now paid all his debts and is free from him. Ruby asks about his wife's condition and how he married her, knowing she has body hair like men. But Abel doesn't answer and leaves. When returning home, he tells Rosalie she doesn't need to help him since he paid all debts, but she refuses and insists on proceeding with the bet. After a month, the bet day comes and villagers gather at Abel's cafe, waiting to see Rosalie, who comes down afraid of people's stares, but everyone is amazed though they suspect her beard is fake until confirming it's real, which makes her gain great fame in the city. People treat her like a caged animal to the point anyone hearing about her visits her workplace to see her beard. Yet Rosalie feels happy believing people are starting to accept her, and this will help pay her husband's debts and renovate their home. Her life changes 180 degrees with their place never lacking customers, but unlike everyone, Abel is upset by Rosalie's actions, telling her she resembles a monster and people will soon get bored, then attack her. After a few days, Ruby's factory manager comes and keeps mocking Rosalie, comparing her to a monkey, because he'd repeatedly asked her to divorce Abel, which she refused. So he decided to take revenge by bullying her whenever he sees her. But Rosalie ignores him. During this time, Abel gets beaten and expelled from the place. Later, a journalist comes offering to photograph Rosalie, and she agrees, with the photos spreading so widely that all France wants to see her in person. Once, while being photographed, his friend who admires Rosalie keeps focusing on her, hoping she'd notice and like him back. Rosalie notices how, since appearing this way, everyone around her excessively admires her, plus women support her to accept her condition without feeling different. With time, her relationship with her husband develops, though he refuses her approaching him, being unable to accept her in this state. Later, Ruby confronts Rosalie, blaming her for his factory's financial losses because all workers keep coming to her place to drink, so she responds she isn't forcing anyone to come, and he could prevent his workers from visiting her place. Ruby gets angry, threatening to turn the whole village against her before leaving. Rosalie continues what she's doing, to the point of selling her photos, earning significant money that changes her and her husband's life, while Ruby keeps watching her suspiciously everywhere. Days later, Ruby returns trying to get close to Rosalie, but she rejects him, so he tries again, only to be rejected and kicked out, making Ruby extremely angry as he leaves, determined to harm her. The next day, a fire breaks out at Ruby's factory, and Ruby lies, claiming the arsonist was a drunk factory worker who had been at Rosalie's cafe that day, purchasing her photos while presenting a photo of Rosalie with the alleged worker as proof, which turns the entire town against Rosalie, making them hate her intensely and want to kill her as her life becomes hell from their bullying and harassment, until one day the townspeople gather at Rosalie's house, beating her and Abel, nearly killing them both before Ruby intervenes at the last moment, leaving Rosalie afterwards confined at home, refusing to see anyone while Abel tries supporting her, especially since her condition isn't her fault. Then one day, Rosalie visits a doctor who tells her she can never conceive, making her heartbroken, as she'd always dreamed of motherhood, losing all hope before returning to her self-imposed isolation. Until days later, Abel suggests adopting a girl named Justo from the local orphanage, which Rosalie agrees to, and when they meet, the girl accepts Rosalie, seeing her as normal with just a hormonal imbalance, while being fascinated by her unique appearance. Then Rosalie tells the orphanage director she wants to take the girl, but the process requires time, so she leaves Justo there, promising to visit during the upcoming charity concert to watch her sing, while vowing frequent visits until adoption approval comes through. But when returning days later to finalize the adoption, Ruby objects, calling Rosalie a monster, unfit for motherhood, which devastates her as she'd hoped for children even through adoption, making her return home depressed, remaining locked in her room for weeks, while suffering nightly nightmares of her father killing her to end his lifelong suffering from her condition, until the charity concert arrives, where Rosalie watches Justo sing, then confronts Ruby before the crowd, blaming him for ruining her life and exposing how they rejected her, despite her congenital condition, before leaving the event collapsing unconscious on the road, prompting Abel to carry her home bleeding from her hands, where a nurse examines her. Then the next day, her father visits, horrified by her appearance, shaves her facial hair while telling Abel to prevent her from looking this way, shocking Rosalie awake to see her changed reflection before overhearing her father discussing her with Abel, making her realize even he can't accept her, as she is leading her to flee toward the ocean, intending suicide with Abel chasing her. But when he catches up, she jumps in, surrendering to death by drowning without resistance, making Abel dive in to save her, only for Rosalie to drag him under, drowning them both together, with their tragic story being told for years afterwards. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for daily movie summaries. Bye.